There are plenty of people running for political office today who identify as Christians, many of who are deeply rooted and connected to local churches. Some pastors who run for office, even at the highest levels, win and continue to preach every Sunday. But who ministers to them? Who serves public servants? And how does that individual develop a level of trust to minister to women and men in public life who are understandably guarded and intensely private? Tonight, a ministry to public officials, a servant to public servants. Stay with us. You've watched it happen dozens of times. An elected official steps aside for family reasons, retiring from the prying eyes of the public with little warning or announcement. Sometimes when the price is right, there's a book written by a close aide of a family friend, a tell-all, promising never before seen or heard details from behind the curtain. What you don't see is the pain of families, spouses and children who endure the years of gossip and questions, divorce, addiction, bankruptcy. All too often, this is the story of those we elect to lead. But what if help, deep help, could be offered to those who serve? The kind of help that helps them confront the challenges of home life and public office with hope. My guest, Jeff Whitebread, ministers to leaders inside the Pennsylvania State Capitol. He's on call for them to pray, to offer friendship, study the Bible, and often just to listen. Jeff, welcome to State of Independence.
Joe, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. You're a native Pennsylvanian.
I am, right? Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
What town are you from?
Berwick, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
You might have heard of our football team.
So. Oh, yeah. Mighty Berwick, yes. Well, that's great. So you grew up in Berwick. Tell us your story. I mean, you grew up in a Christian family?
I did, yeah. So I grew up and really was... really kind of nominal though, kind of in my faith early on. And it wasn't till probably I was in my 20s where I really kind of had someone, just a relationship kind of step in and really give me a vision for a different kind of life. But, it's just a blessing to have parents that were always there, who always supported me, have a younger sister as well. So, we really had a great home.
Yeah, that's great. So you went to high school in Berwick.
We did, and I actually went to the Vo-Tech, which is Columbia Montour Vo-Tech. So,
how'd you choose that?
Yeah, early on, well, I really struggled in school. I really didn't like to be in school and study, and my parents, praying and strategizing in what to do, they attended the Vo-Tech, and I ended up in the drafting program there, and then ended up as a draftsman a couple years later.
Did you like it?
After that, I did. Yeah, just I started when it was the hand drawing, and so you had the board, and there was some artistic skill to that, and then it kind of shifted to computer drafting after that.
Did you think, for the most part, that was going to be your career? I mean, once you started doing it?
Yeah, I did. So I started doing drafting, and then ended up in the IT profession. There was a guy there who mentored me and was like, "Oh, we have this small kind of network," and it became a different position with a different company doing email administration for many years.
So I guess people are watching, they say, well, this is great, but Jeff is a great guy. But how do you go from being an email administrator and a draftsman before that to ministering to powerful people on Capitol Hill, to state senators, state reps? Yeah. How do you do that? How does that happen?
Right. Well, certainly no plan of mine. There was not a 5-year strategy to be able to do that. I think, kind of in my 20s, I really got a vision for a different type of life, the availability of just life with Jesus, and really a desire to help and impact others. It kind of really reshifted my whole life and my whole world and the way I began to understand things. And so while I continued kind of in professional life, that I had this desire to really serve the Lord, was involved in a church plant that kind of lasted for a couple years, and then just kind of said, well, I'm just going to raise a family and have kids and do my job and try to follow Jesus as best I could. It was a little bit later. I was, in my 40s, where a friend of mine who was as well mentoring me comes to me, and my job was at a bit of a transition. The technology I was working with was disappearing. The company that I was working with was going out of business. And he says, I think you'd be a really good fit at the Capitol. And I says,
what did you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that was somewhat overwhelming. I could not see what he saw, but it really was just a privilege of going with him, being in that context of developing relationships with people who just sense their need, this disconnection, how everybody comes to the Capitol for something, and to be able to go and say, well, I just want to serve. I don't want anything in return. I just want to be a blessing to those in that context. And so that really was, just saw a tremendous opportunity to be able to do that.
That's the right heart. What a wonderful, sweet heart and spirit to think that way. People who serve on Capitol Hill are lifted up by everybody else. They're held in high regard because of their position. Many of them have won competitive races for the seat that they hold, and many of them see future political offices as a place where they may land. Maybe even higher political office. And so they're in kind of a tough position because it's isolating. That kind of fame and power isolates you. You can't just be like a regular person anymore. You can't just talk to anybody.
That's right.
And so to have somebody like you that they can talk to, open up to on Capitol Hill is huge. Do you talk to both Democrats and Republicans?
I do. So from a ministry perspective, we're non-political, nonpartisan, just really trying to go in there and to minister, gospel hope and spiritual strength to our leaders. And I think
so. If Democrats see you talking to a Republican, do they get suspicious or?
Sometimes. I mean, sometimes it really there is some of that concern. Like, can I really trust in that context? But I think, one of the things in terms of the relationship there is just, for me, being willing to be vulnerable, right? Like I think, how do you break down the trust? It's sharing that journey of understanding of, hey, there's a lot that's expected. There's a lot, it's a very confrontational environment, right? And so how do you, where are you getting your strength from? And, and I think that's really just been my ongoing journey. It's very interesting how the Lord works. He puts you in places, but he's not really done doing work within you to bring about change. And about 3 years into the ministry, I was at a place where, I had hit the wall spiritually. I, kind of say I taught everything I knew to teach, and I did everything I knew to do. And I was on the quick road to burnout on my way out of the ministry. And it was really trying to desperately needing to find Jesus for myself, for him to be the one who would strengthen and encourage me. And so I think that sense of our weaknesses begin to be what our strengths, how God can use that to become our strength. And so that really has been what's changed the focus of my ministry, is saying, okay, well, how do I bring that type of help and encouragement to people in this context, and to see that that there are those who are open and receptive to that, and sense that they need that in their lives.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing to be able to do, and a wonderful way to serve. The challenge of ministry is that it's not always so quantifiable. You can't say to yourself, well, I started, this year, and then now 3 years later, look at what I've accomplished. You can't quantify it that way. As a matter of fact, you might not even know whose life was changed because of you, how God used you to bring somebody to himself. You might not even know that until maybe a chance meeting somewhere down the line, or from somebody else, a third party that may say, you know what, Jeff, you touched so-and-so's life and that changed them. You shared the gospel with them, or you were there for them when they were hurting most, and they were afraid to talk to everybody else, but they confided in you, and it strengthened their walk as a Christian person, and really made them realize they need to follow Christ. But you may not know that.
Yeah.
And so that's the real challenge. But the necessity of your ministry, being there, the environment is so contentious right now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, you've got people at each other's throats.
Yep.
And I'm guessing from my vantage point that there probably is not a lot of interaction between the two parties. They don't come together on a regular basis. There aren't a lot of Democrats and Republicans say, let's get together and share a meal or do they share a Bible study together?
Yeah. So initially when I started, and hard to say, it's been 10 years ago, right, when I started, but 10 years has passed, and there's certainly, it's different than it once was, and so it's more challenging to develop that level of trust, and for people to feel comfortable to say, okay, I'm willing to go here, and I understand that there's a certain level of openness and my own exposing my life to be able to be changed. And so I think part of that is then trying to meet people where they're at, to understanding that, how do we measure that success? I look at the Capitol now, right? And one of my closest friends, a guy who's been in legislature for, I believe, 18 years, has chosen to retire. And so he's been a guy who I've kind of counted on and leaned on. And so what does the ministry look like when someone like that isn't there? And seeing that, okay, well, those are opportunities really to say, okay, God, what are you doing? How are you at work? How can I maybe be working with people who are open, and to seeing them have that interest and to develop others who might be interested to know more about Jesus and to study the Bible or to connect over various ways.
You understand their job. Would you want their job?
I couldn't do their job. Yeah. I mean, it's a challenging job. It's a job when it's difficult. I mean, one of the things that they experience is just this disconnection from family as well. So many of them are traveling in, right? So you have this. The other thing, I remember this time I went to a friend of mine. He had an event that I went to, was up in Scranton. And so he's like, hey, I'll pick you up, and then we'll go to the event. We stopped at like 4 other events before we got to the actual fun. We went to a breakfast, and then we went over here, and then we went to this church. I was exhausted. I got done. Then we had to go to spaghetti dinner, at the local firehouse. Right. And it was just like, I was exhausted.
You're exhausted, I'm like, this like, hey,
I can't
place
do
is
this.
shaking hands. And
exactly. And I think, I think for the legislators that I've gotten to know, they really do care about people. They really want to serve people, and they want to be a blessing. They love doing the constituent type of services, so much of that. And so I think that there's just that, that understanding for me of the challenges that are there with it.
Right. You don't have an office on the Hill, so
I don't.
So you're around.
Right.
And there's actually a power in that because you're there, you're around, but you don't have your own office, so you don't have to worry about he's catering to one side or the other, or he's passing secrets, or he's using his office for leverage. You are there in their midst, and available to them.
Yeah.
And has God been able to use you in that kind of a setting?
Yeah, I think so. I kind of go in as a normal visitor, right? So I there's no special credentials or anything. I'm just a visitor, and then when I'm there, I really seek to kind of be in that environment, to kind of see and experience what they're going through. So, at times I'll pop in on a committee meeting, right, and see some of the legislators I know and see what's going on there, to watch a session that's going on the floor in the gallery, and to see the discussion and the back and forth of what's happening there. And so part of it is just being available to people. I think from a ministry terms of Capital Commission, this idea of a ministry of presence, of just kind of saying, okay, when the legislators are there, I'm going to do my best to be there and to be available for them and to...
Do you ever spend time with legislators in their districts where they live?
Yeah, on occasion, if, going to various events and things like that. I think with our legislature being full-time, it allows me to see them more frequently than knowing that they're going to be, so in 2 weeks, they're going to be at the Capitol, right? And so I have an opportunity to connect with them and minister in that context.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, this is such an exciting time, the time in which we live. You have all these issues that impact on the lives of people and decisions that have to be made by elected officials that are life changing.
Yes.
They vote to do X, Y, or Z, and that impacts people, their lives, what they may or may not do, what they may or may not be able to do, how much money they have to spend. If all that's impacted by it. Yeah. So how do you pray for both sides? I'm sure that you even have an opinion ultimately, although you keep your opinion to yourself. Yeah. But how do you pray for somebody who maybe doesn't agree, whatever they're saying doesn't line up with what your belief system is?
That's right.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah. I heard someone say a long time ago that the way you pray for people is you just seek their good. Right? You seek to be a blessing to them, to know that they're people who have families, they're people who, have dreams and desires. And certainly, I want them to come to know Jesus because I think knowing and walking with Him is the greatest news, the greatest opportunity that's available to us. But as well, I just want to be a blessing to them. And so just to seek their good, just to say, okay, what are they involved with? What are the things that matter to them? God, would you be close to them? Would you minister to their heart? Would they come to know the love of Jesus, just personally, in the midst of maybe a very chaotic, overwhelming, discouraging, a day where things don't kind of turn out the way you would want, and so I think that's just really afforded me that opportunity, and then just to have those opportunities where people might grab me and say, "Hey, could you pray for me?" or be aware of a situation and just saying, "Let me pray for you." And one of the best advice that I've ever heard from somebody give in terms of prayer is instead of saying, "Let me pray for you," just praying for them in that moment. And there's this, you're putting yourself on the line, right? You're risking for Jesus' sake. You're saying, okay, I believe that you're going to be at work in this situation. And so just trying to do that more and more in the context of the ministry of just grabbing people, how's it going? Can we pray right now in the context of what they're doing?
Yeah, that's really nice. I guess if you say to somebody, "I want to pray for you," they say, "Well, what did I do that you feel like you have to pray for me?"
Yes. So, or I'll pray for you, and then I lose the note, and forget to do it, and So yeah.
Right. No, that's what a marvelous ministry you have, and what a marvelous work God is doing in you and with you. I know that you live in Montgomery County, so it's a little hike out to Harrisburg.
So it takes about an hour, 45 minutes. Yeah. And, I think one of the blessings has been for me to be able to experience that's what so I'm away from my wife, right? Yeah. We have boys that are older now, but getting the call and saying, okay, this is broken or this isn't working, and I'm in Harrisburg, right? Yeah. That happens. Yeah. That's just life. And so to say, okay, I understand what it means to be away from family. Yeah. I understand what it means to say I'm going to be in this environment, and then kind of making the transition back, right? And saying, how do I do that well?
Right. Well, when we come back, I'll ask Jeff about how those outside the elected office, can love those on the inside. How can we see them as more than a good vote or a bad tweet? How can we learn to love them better?
You're watching Joe Watkins' State of Independence on Lighthouse TV. Positively different. Share your comments about today's program in the comment box at joewatkins.org.
We're visiting with Jeff Whitebread. He's with an organization called Capital Commission, a ministry to those working in the state capitol, especially leaders. Now you've got a family. We just talked a moment ago about your family.
Yeah.
You've got a beautiful wife.
Yeah, a lovely wife.
Yes.
Coming on 30 years being
Very
married
nice.
from
Very
England.
nice.
So
Yes.
we were talking about that, and 3 kind of adult children. So a daughter who is going to be, if I get these wrong, Joe, I'm going to be in trouble.
Right,
That's right. So trying to do some quick math, but I believe it's 21 in November, and then my boys are 23 and 25 years old.
Wow, that's
So,
great.
Yeah.
What do they think about your ministry, about the work you do?
Yeah, I mean, so they have their own opinions about things and situations, but I think it's encouragement to them just for me to try to minister in the way I'm trying to be a blessing to them, to be a help and a support.
Yeah. Well, I guess like everybody else, they see all the commercials, the advertising, and they have strong opinions, I'm sure themselves.
Yeah.
You must talk at home around the dinner table about different issues that come to the fore, and then figuring out what do you think and how do you feel about it? Or they may just tell you, this is how I feel about this.
That's right. It's more telling you.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And these are the people you have to pray for. You say, you know what?
Yeah.
I saw State Representative so and so the other day, and they don't agree with you, but my charge is to love them anyway and to pray for them and to pray with them.
That's right.
And that's such an important thing. The Bible tells us to even love our enemies.
Yeah,
and
that's
to do
right.
good to those who persecute us, to people who despitefully use us. We're supposed to love them and do good to them and pray for them as well. And you get to do that on the Capitol. I wish there was more of it because the environment, at least to those of us who are outside that golden circle, looks so contentious that it would be helpful. We all call ourselves Americans.
Yep.
It'd be wonderful and helpful to see something that looked like at least love for each other, even with disagreeing opinions or different opinions on important topics. Right. The capacity to love each other past the issue differences, and there's very little evidence of that to the viewing public.
And I think that's one of the great challenges and one of the great opportunities I think for those who would identify as, I want to follow Jesus. I want to be like Jesus. I intend to be like Jesus. That can I do that in that way? Can I become that kind of person? Can Jesus inhabit my life in such a way that my first response is not to slap back, right, when I'm attacked, but to love and to bless, because we come to find that is the better way to live. We come to know that is, Jesus is inviting us into this abundant life, right, this easy yoke, and we have to see that, I think, grow that vision of Jesus knows what he's doing, right? He's not just nice, he's smart, he knows how the world works, he knows how to bring about his purposes, and if we were to step into that and to engage that, I think that we might be surprised at how he would be at work in the midst of our
lives. If people wanted to
lives.
support what you're doing, which is so important, how could they do that? Is there a website they can go to? Is there a way that they can give?
Yeah, so if you go to capitalcommission.org/Pennsylvania, there's an opportunity to give there. There's also information about a prayer tool that we have called pray1tim2.org, which allows you to go to the Pennsylvania site, and it'll list legislators to pray for every day. So there'll be a picture, there'll be maybe what they provided about themselves, in the public domain about who they are, and so it would just to be able to be in prayer for them,
Excellent.
Just to be able to be a blessing to them. That would be a great help. And then, just pray for, me, and just the opportunity to minister, open doors, the willingness to learn how to wait upon the Lord, but then that shrewdness of the snake to be able to strike when the opportunity is right, to be able to act when that door opens up and to say, yeah, that's the moment, to be able to develop a friendship or have a word for somebody.
Wonderful. Wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. Beautiful.
Yeah.
We're very thankful God put Jeff inside the walls of the state capitol to serve those who are called to lead public lives. And glad we got a little window into the world of people who we sometimes only hear about when a special interest group tells us to call them out or protest at their office. I think this was tremendously helpful. We'll be right back with closing thoughts with our great producer, Jeff Coleman.
Learn more about Joe Watkins and the mission of this program at joewatkins.net. And tell Joe what you thought about today's program in the comment box.
And now let's talk to our great producer, Jeff Coleman.
Well, it is always helpful, I think, to think about political leaders as people, just in general.
You've been one. You know what it's like. You've been an elected official.
Yeah, I think people see the little thumbnail of you in the newspaper, or they see a short clip of an interview, or they see the wrong that you've done or the mistakes you've made if they're exposed. But you really don't get a chance to sit across the table. What you really want is for everybody to be able to sit across the table from a political leader and ask them questions about how they think, about what they like, what from the foods they like to where they go to church. All of that helps inform kind of the person's understanding of a political leader. The idea that you cannot hate people from close up, from across the table. You can somehow, many people do hate people from a distance because they've never met them when you meet them. So having someone like Jeff in the Capitol who is able to turn out all the noise and say, this is about your relationship with God, because your relationship with God will determine your effectiveness in loving people, in serving people. So forget about the re-election, right? Forget about fundraising for a minute and focus on the most important relationship. That is a transformative mission in the state capitol. It really is.
Yeah, what an amazing thing to be able to love everybody and not discount or dislike people because of where they stand on issues.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing.
Very.
Yeah, what a blessing. Well, let me challenge you that the next time you hear the name of a president or a former president that makes you angry, to say a prayer for them instead. That God will protect their family, that they would turn to God when they're overwhelmed by life, and pray that He gives you a compassionate heart for people who don't share any of your political views. Ask God to help you love them as He loved us. Send me your feedback on today's program in the comment box at joewatkins.org. It means a lot to me and the team here at Lighthouse TV. From America's first capital, Philadelphia, I'm Joe Watkins. Thanks so much for watching. God willing, I'll see you next week. You do it marvelously. If we could all learn to love people with whom we don't agree, and pray for people who we think may be off base or on the...
Joe Watkins' State of Independence is a production of Lighthouse TV, positively different. Made possible in part because of the support of viewers like you.